ArriveCAN is an international embarrassment that held up the border relief to assist with the Nova Scotia Hurricane Fiona disaster. This is absolutely sick how officials in Nova Scotia confirmed this, and the Liberal Party is saying, nothing to see here. This is so telling it makes me want to scream. I also want to extend my thoughts to everyone affected. Here's the clip.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Nova Scotia Power reported that the arriveCAN app blocked American crews that were trying to rush into the province to help with the recovery response and wasted valuable time. Originally, the Public Safety Minister denied that that had happened, but only to be contradicted by the Emergency Preparedness Minister, who said, in fact, there was an issue at the border. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister suspend the arriveCAN app today, not Saturday, so that no more holdups happen at the border for those who are trying to help those in desperate need?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Obviously, Mr. Speaker, everyone's focus was on getting support to affected areas as quickly as possible. I myself saw off an Ottawa Hydro crew heading out to Nova Scotia to help out. We know how important it is that people get across the border quickly, and I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that there were no delays at any border because of arriveCAN or otherwise.
Le député de Shelburne River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Atlantic Canadians have been devastated by the effects of Hurricane Fiona this past weekend. They were then shocked to learn from Nova Scotia Power and Premier Tim Houston that emergency crews from our American neighbours were unable to cross the border due to the arriveCAN app. Now, the Prime Minister has stated twice in this House today that no delays happened, but I want to hear it from the Public Safety Minister. Was the Prime Minister correct in saying that no delays happened, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure my colleague that the Prime Minister was absolutely correct when he said that there was no delays caused by arriveCAN. In fact, over the last number of days, we've been reaching out to CBSA and Nova Scotia representatives from the government to ensure that that is indeed the case. Most importantly, this is a time for all members of the House to be united, as the Leader of the Opposition himself said, the Leader of the Conservative Party said, so that we can work together to do what is necessary on the ground to support everybody who has been impacted. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think you could understand that we'd be confused when the Minister of Emergency Preparedness acknowledged that there were delays at the border. Now the Prime Minister is saying there were no delays, and the Minister of Public Safety is backing him up. We're not sure what the message is coming out of this government, but I think we can all agree that given that the government has agreed to scrap the arriveCAN app, that this government will acknowledge that it was a failure. Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would say that a tremendous tragedy has befallen the people in Atlantic Canada.
That's right.
Today is a time where we stand with all of them. At the beginning of this House, that was a sentiment I had heard. We've attempted to answer these questions. We have answered that arriveCAN was not responsible for any delays. Right now, I think we all have to be pulling in the same direction, asking questions about what real solutions we can offer to Atlantic Canadians. I look forward to those questions, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, there's been unprecedented damage, homes destroyed, thousands were without power, and we're now hearing reports about fatalities. We know that Hurricane Fiona was certainly destructive and deadly, but meanwhile the Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Safety are busy denying the Nova Scotia Premier was telling the truth that the arriveCAN app delayed the entry of American power line crews to get to those in need in Nova Scotia and the Maritimes. Is this the priority of the Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, to deny the claims of Premier Houston and Nova Scotia Power? Is this really their priority right now, Mr. Speaker, or will they apologize to East Coast Canadians?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we have been working every moment with Premier Houston and with emergency officials. I again would repeat, I'm not sure how many times different ministers and the Prime Minister can say it, there was no delay, and I look forward to questions on how we can positively contribute to helping those in Atlantic Canada.
That's right.
Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, a way to positively contribute is not to pick a fight with the Premier of Nova Scotia in the middle of a hurricane defending the arriveCAN app. arriveCAN has has disrupted travel, damaged tourism, separated families, and caused thousands of Canadians undue hardship for years, but these Liberals refused to act until it was too late. It took the delay of American power line crews' entry into Canada to get to those in need for Liberals to finally act to end the mandatory use of arriveCAN. It is a national embarrassment, Mr. Speaker. Will they show some humility and apologize?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of collaboration in this moment of emergency, I want to assure my colleague that I reached out, the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs reached out to the Premier of Nova Scotia to be sure that he had all of the support that we could provide from the federal government to help Nova Scotians at this difficult time. And that is what we are laser-like focused on, making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces are deployed, that we are matching contributions based on the generosity of Canadians, and doing everything possible to help Nova Scotians and all Canadians so that they can get over this difficult period, and we'll continue to do that.
L'Honorable Député for Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll choose to believe the Premier of Nova Scotia over this Liberal Prime Minister with respect to arriveCAN. Sadly, there's other things to highlight, Mr. Speaker. Inaction by this Liberal government has left rural and remote Canadians at a serious disadvantage. The last several days, while cleaning up, has seen Atlantic Canadians with very poor cell phone service. The government promised to improve connectivity for rural and remote Canada has not materialized. For the safety of Canadians, when will this government make connectivity a priority?
L'Honorable Secrétaire Parlementaire.
Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that mobile connectivity is very important to rural safety and security and for all isolated areas. The government sees broadband high-speed access as a priority, and that's why we have a fund for these connections in rural and Indigenous communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's that kind of priorities that make us really question how soon help will get to Atlantic Canada. And we're still cutting down trees to free trap vehicles and damage buildings. And the people in Cumberland Colchester sadly come up to me, and they're very concerned about the economy and the cost of living. They want this Liberal government to know that times are tough, they're finding it hard to make ends meet, and that Hurricane Fiona has made things even worse. They want to know when this Prime Minister will cancel the planned tax hikes on paychecks, gas, groceries, and home heating.
Mr. Speaker, for months, Conservatives have been calling on this government to scrap the failed arriveCAN app. But rather than admit it was the right thing to do, the Prime Minister refused to budge on a border policy that was already plagued with issues. Incredibly, this weekend, that came at the cost of emergency crews from the U.S. being stuck at the border when Atlantic Canadians needed their help. Will this government ensure now that useless red tape is eliminated so that Atlantic Canadians can get the support that they need?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by attributing myself to the comments previously made by all honourable members, which is that we stand with all impacted Canadians in the wake of Hurricane Fiona. As this House has heard, the government is deploying the Canadian Armed Forces. We are matching contributions to Red Cross, and we are also dispatching federal funds to do whatever we can to support those impacted Canadians. When it comes to arriveCAN, I want to inform my honourable colleague that I reached out to Premier Houston, as did my colleague, the Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs. We assured him and the member of his government that we will do whatever we can to facilitate travel of first responders to help Nova Scotians, and we will do whatever it takes to support Canadians at this time. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Scotia Power, le Premier ministre Houston ont confirmé.
Nova Scotia Power and the Premier confirmed that arriveCAN did hold those crews up. People expect the government to be there for them, but unfortunately, this government's still dithering when it's time for action. Fisheries and Oceans, Mr. Speaker, if you can imagine, in the middle of the hurricane, asked people not to go onto the beaches to collect lobsters while families were watching their homes swept away. This is unacceptable. Will the Prime Minister get his troops in line and properly respond to the calls from help from the victims of this storm? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in times of distress, or difficulty. It's important to stick to the facts, and that's why I'm pleased to be able to confirm that despite the rumors circulating, there were no delays at the border due to arriveCAN. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Well, that's what Nova Scotia Power said and Premier Tim Houston said. The Magdalen Islands, Gaspé, and all of Atlantic Canada have been hard hit by Hurricane Fiona. And these were regions that were already struggling with the rising cost of living. Can this government say what steps they plan to take to reduce the administrative paperwork involved in people trying to get their homes and businesses built back as quickly as possible? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Once again, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question, and I can assure him that's precisely the kind of conversation we were already having with the Atlantic premiers and the Government of Quebec. We used an example that the Prime Minister set up with Premier Horgan in BC, specifically to expedite applications for assistance from the federal government to make sure that reconstruction is done in cooperation with the provinces and as quickly as possible. And those conversations will be ongoing. We have an exceptional system. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, there were 340,000 homes without electricity in Atlantic Canada yesterday, and crews from the U.S. were stopped by the arriveCAN app. We asked the Prime Minister to suspend arriveCAN. Can the Prime Minister announce today that arriveCAN will be scrapped for everyone? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand that it's important for everyone to be able to get to where they're needed. We have a team from Ottawa going to Nova Scotia this evening. We have teams coming from the U.S. We thank everyone for pitching in. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, there was no delay at the border because of Arrive Canada or anything else. There was no delay. We are helping make sure that all necessary help gets there quickly. The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, Ottawa's ending COVID restrictions at the border. No more testing, no more masks, no more quarantine.